Governor. Thank you, Marissa, for starting the recording. We're here today to call on the governor to put the New York Heat Act in her upcoming executive budget and for the New York State Assembly to pass this critical bill. In the past month alone, New Yorkers have suffered through unbreathable air from fires made worse by climate change, the kind of flooding that used to happen only once in a millennium, and extreme heat driving up our energy bills and making for a hot, broke, toxic summer. Climate change is here, and it's really harming us. We're all feeling it. A New Yorker died in the flooding 2 weeks ago in the Hudson Valley. Already 370 New Yorkers die every year from heat-related deaths, and that number is going to rise as climate change gets worse. Yet Governor Hochul has simply offered warnings to stay safe and get used to this new normal. This is not even close to what we expect from our elected leaders, especially as our energy bills continue to rise, like the Con Ed energy rate hike approved just last week, which will raise the energy bills of Con Ed customers starting next month. Our planet is on fire, and we're paying more than ever for it, while our leaders in Albany seem content to watch it burn. We need Governor Hochul to commit now to including the New York Heat Act in her 2024 executive budget. And we need the Assembly to commit to passing this bill too. The New York State Senate has already passed the bill, showing true leadership, and we need the rest of Albany to follow their lead. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what the New York Heat Act does. The New York Heat Act will support the transition off of the dirty fracked gas system that's the #1 driver of climate change in New York. And it will save low-income New Yorkers up to $75 every month on their energy bills. That's more money for food, rent, and medicine. It will also end the $200 million or more in ratepayer subsidies that we all pay to help expand the gas system. And that money just goes to rich executives and the fossil fuel industry while they keep expanding a system that's literally washing away our roads, suspending service on Amtrak and Metro North for days on end, making the air unbreathable, driving up our insurance rates, clogging our emergency rooms and hospitals with respiratory-related illnesses. And all of this is happening on our dime. So if you think getting off of this system is expensive, consider what we're paying for it now. Billions in recovery costs, let alone the individual energy bills that we pay now just to stay cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Frankly, we cannot afford to stay on the system anymore. So we need the New York Heat Act to pass, and we need our elected leaders in Albany to act now. So I'm gonna first hand it over to the lead sponsor in the Senate of the New York Heat Act, Senator Liz Krueger.
Thank you very much, Jessica, for explaining the bill so well. I'm very happy to be here with all these great advocates for us to do what, frankly, we don't have a choice about anymore. We have to do this. Jessica was describing some of the impacts we're seeing because we're still dominantly dependent on oil and gas, and we have to get off it as fast as possible. So when people say there's not a rush, look out your window, read the weather reports coming in from around the world. Did you know that this morning they announced that they're not going to sell property insurance in several states anymore because the climate risks are just too great for insurance to actually pay for the costs. There's enormous cost, both for mitigating the damage done by the oil and gas industry and the expectation of what we have to do to protect ourselves from the changes that we can't stop. So we can do some things right here in New York. I work on many important bills with my colleagues and friends inside of government and out in the advocacy world, including the best climate scientists in the country. And we know what we need to do. And one is getting off of oil and gas. So why would we continue to have laws in New York State that tell utilities they have to continue to put gas lines in to new construction? We already know we've passed other laws saying we're not going to allow you to use gas in new construction, why would we continue to build gas lines to these newer buildings, costing ratepayers an enormous amount of money? I believe Jessel already quoted, we think that it costs $200 million a year to ratepayers just to build additional new gas structure into buildings that we don't even want to allow anyone to use. That's absurd. And it's also sending the wrong message to industry. We need to be clear to industry. This is what you can't do anymore. We're not going to allow it. And you're going to have to pay for the damage that has been created. And this bill is a simple and frankly obvious way to start to address some of those issues. So I'm very happy that the Senate was able to pass this bill at the very end of session. And we're here today to remind everyone to please call on the Assembly to pass this bill. I know there are many members that desperately want to get it passed in the Assembly. Pat Fahey is the lead sponsor in the Assembly. And we then need the governor not only to agree to sign the bill, but frankly, if she wants to steal the bill and put it in her budget, that's okay with me. We just need this done. So that's really what I'm here to say, and to back up all my colleagues on the simplicity and the importance and the real value of this bill. Oh, did I mention that this bill also will save low and middle income New York families up to $75 every month on their energy bills? And that's more money that they need for food and rent and medicine. So there's something everyone can like in this bill. So I'm hoping we can move it as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Senator Krueger. We appreciate your leadership so much on this bill and so many other really important issues. So I'm going to pass it now to Sonal Jessel, the Director of Policy at We Act for Environmental Justice.
Thank you, Jessica, and thank you, Senator Krueger, for your continued championship of this legislation that's so important. My name is Sonal Jessel. I'm the Director of Policy at We Act for Environmental Justice. We are a community-based organization in Harlem in New York City, and we have been around for 35 years advocating for the environmental health of all neighborhoods, both in the city, state, and also on the federal level. And we're here today because, as we're seeing, extreme heat is really bad this summer. We are seeing increased rainfalls. We are seeing wildfires in other parts of the country. We are seeing the ocean getting so much warmer, which is really scary in terms of what is going to happen to our weather in the future. And we're seeing people die. We're seeing New Yorkers go to the hospital, emergency room visits, hospitalizations, and death from extreme weather. So we are at a place where, to what my colleagues have already said, the climate crisis is here. It is happening now. And we really have to act now to help move ourselves away from the cause of the climate crisis, which is our heavy use of fossil fuels. So what we need is the New York heat bill to be passed, particularly because it is offering protection for low-income and middle-income people to be protected from these crazy utility bill cost increases. Con Edison, our electricity provider for New York City, is increasing their rates once again when people are already struggling to make ends meet, not only with their utility costs, but with higher rents, with the higher cost of living, difficulty paying for healthy food. So many issues are happening all at once, and utility bill increases makes it so much harder for people to ensure that they're able to live a healthy and a safe life. We also are seeing that the fossil fuel industry is taking money. Oil executives, very wealthy oil executives, are taking money and using it to continue to pollute our communities, to continue to hurt us both in our wallets and in our health. And the New York heat bill will end the $200 million in taxpayer subsidies that we pay to these oil executives. That is $200 million that goes back to people to create a healthier environment, to help lower utility bill costs for people, for everyday people that need it. So we really need to pass the New York Heat Act now. We cannot afford to stay on the system that we are at. We know for decades we have known that fossil fuels is the reason why we're seeing extreme weather events, why we're seeing people suffer. And it's time that New York State really act now to address this crisis and start moving ourselves away from fossil fuels. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sonal. So next we are going to hear from Liz Moran, the New York policy advocate at Earthjustice.
Morning, everybody. It's really important to note that the climate crisis is costing New Yorkers right now. Everyday New Yorkers are already paying the price for inaction on climate change. They recently were choking on dangerous air quality from the wildfires in Canada. We're seeing new temperature records yet again. 2023 is on track to be the hottest year ever recorded, which is driving up our energy bills. We're paying more in our energy bills for the cost of inaction for keeping us on this expensive gas system. Just a couple weeks ago, we had unprecedented rainfall that led people stranded. It took a life. It's going to cost millions of dollars in those damages, and people couldn't get one place to another. Amtrak lines were shut down. If you wanted to, you couldn't get from Albany to New York City. This disrupted many people's plans. Inaction on the climate crisis is unacceptable. It is disrupting the everyday lives of New Yorkers. The question really should be, how can we afford to stay on this system? We can't have elected officials throwing up their hands and simply calling this the new normal. This is the new abnormal. We need our elected officials, we need Governor Hochul, we need Speaker Hasty to rise to the moment. The answer here is simple. It's the NY Heat Act. It's a no-brainer to tackle these rising costs of our energy bills while also addressing the climate crisis by passing the NY Heat Act. This legislation will save New Yorkers $75 a month. That's a lot of money. Think about what you can do with $75 a month. And it will also give New York State the tools it desperately needs to make sure that we aren't continuing to build out expensive, dirty fossil fuel infrastructure. So with all of this being said, clearly we are at a pivotal moment. And Governor Hochul should absolutely embrace this legislation for the 2024 budget. She should announce it now. This has been a hot, expensive climate crisis summer, and it's time for lawmakers to step up. Thank you all so much.
Thank you so much, Liz. Okay, we're going to hand it back to Marissa now, who's going to take questions from the members of the press who are here. And thank you so much for the press who are here.
Thank you, Jessica, and everyone. Yes, so if you are a reporter with a question, please put your name and outlet in the chat, and then I will call on you. Tim Balk with Daily News.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
This is a question for Senator Krueger. Obviously, the legislative session's wrapped up. I'm just curious about the timing of this press conference. Do you want the Assembly to come back to this? Is this for next year? I guess also, is this reaction primarily to the weather we're seeing this summer, or was the plan always to try to put some heat on the lawmakers in the Assembly after they did not pass it during the session?
Well, thank you for all those questions. And I think the answer is yes, all of the above. We are living in the beginning of a crisis that will only get worse unless we act immediately. People are talking every day about all of the emergencies we are seeing throughout the world due to climate damage. So we have a legislative session. Sometimes we come back for emergencies. Sometimes we come back in the fall for a bunch of things. So I think it's never inappropriate to be talking about how can we legislatively address climate crisis in the state of New York. You hear the governor talking about it every day, talking about the new costs to New York State every day from the climate emergency and the damage that's being done. So if she would, as I said before, if she would like to grab hold of this bill and insert it in her budget for next year, I, for one, as the sponsor in the Senate, will say hip hip hooray or something to that note. I don't think I say hip hip hooray very often. And I'll say, great, let's get it done in the budget as quickly as possible. I believe the Assembly would do the same thing. If we're getting called back into any kind of emergency session for whatever reasons, this bill and bills like it should be on those calendars. If it's not till January, then let's get this done in both houses again in January at the beginning of the year. I'm on this press conference. I've been talking about this bill and a number of other environmental bills constantly since we left session, because we can't drop the ball anymore. We spent decades not doing what we knew needed to be done. Now we're so far behind. We're literally in a race for our own lives and the planet's life. So I don't care how we get it done. I just need to get it done.
Thanks, Senator Krueger. If we have any more questions from the press, you can put your name and outlet in the chat now. In the meantime, I am putting my email in the chat. You can reach out to me if you have any follow-up questions. I will be around and available all day. If we don't have any more press questions, we will wrap now. I will send around the recording and again, reach out if you have any questions. Thanks so much, everyone, and have a great day.